Hi everyone, I'm Ben from the Merrimack Public Library, and this is If You Know You Know Kitchen Survival. Today I'm going to show you how to make rice balls, or onigiri. This is a simple Japanese recipe that can be a nice way to mix things up, change a pace for lunch, or maybe a snack. So let's get down to it. So to begin, to make rice balls, we're going to need some rice. Specifically, you're going to want short grain rice, most of which in the US is sold as sushi rice. Sometimes medium grain rice is thrown in as sushi rice too. From what I can tell, if it's being marketed as sushi rice, it should work for making rice balls. Anyway, the reason you're going to want a shorter grain rice is that unlike a longer rice like a jasmine or a basmati, these get a little stickier when they're cooked, so they'll clump together better, which means that it'll hold their shape when we make it into balls. If you tried to make a rice ball out of jasmine rice, it'll just crumble apart immediately. You're also going to want some nori, or roasted seaweed. You can feel free to skip this if you don't care for it, but I personally like nori a lot. It adds a little bit of flavor, and it makes it easier to hold onto the rice ball without getting sticky rice all over your hands. There's a bunch of different kinds of seaweed that are used in Japanese cooking, so make sure you're looking for nori, just to make sure you get the right stuff. Kombu or something like that will not work. Also, it'll be pretty obvious because nori is the one that's sold in these long, flat sheets. Okay, so I've got 2 cups of my sushi rice here, just to sort of show you what that looks like. And I've got them in a fine mesh strainer to wash. It's helpful to wash off your rice before you use it for something like a rice ball to remove any excess starch. This will, otherwise it'll get kind of gloopy, but if you're making something like a rice pilaf, that's what you want. In our case, we want separated rice kernels, I don't know, grains. So for that, we're going to want to wash it. So just run this under some water, swirl it around with your hands, make sure the water's getting in there and getting all the rice. And we're looking for the water to run more or less clear. It's never going to be like 100% clear, but it shouldn't be very cloudy. If you don't have a sieve like this, you can definitely do this with a bowl and just dump the water out, in which case you probably want to fill the bowl with water, swirl the rice around a couple times, and then dump the water maybe 3 or 4 times, again, just until the water is mostly clear when it comes out. That one takes a little bit of practice not to throw away a bunch of your rice when you're getting rid of the water, which is why I prefer the strainer personally. Alright, so that's looking pretty clear. Give that a couple of shakes to make sure that all of our water is drained out. And move on to preparing our rice. Okay, so next we're going to cover the rice in water and let it soak for 30 minutes. This helps to rehydrate the rice. It'll make the texture better. It'll also let us shorten our cook time a little bit, which is nice when it's really hot out like it is today. So while we're waiting on our rice to finish soaking, we can talk about fillings. One classic one is tuna fish with mayonnaise. Okay, so once you've opened and drained your can of tuna, just go ahead and throw that into a bowl. I've got solid here. Chunk might be a little easier to mix things into, but this will work just fine. And then you're going to want to add about 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise. Feel free to eyeball this if you know what amount of mayonnaise you like in tuna fish. That's 1. 2. And go ahead and mash that up. Mix it in. Alright, go ahead and give that a taste, see if it's the right consistency that you like. And if you want, season this with salt and pepper, or even a little bit of soy sauce if you want to stick with the Japanese theme. I'm just going to give this, I've got a little salt and pepper handy, so I'm going to go with that. And this will be all set to go when our rice balls are ready. Okay, so the next filling we're going to talk about are umeboshi, or pickled plums. This is like a classic rice ball filling in Japan. The umeboshi are very sour and can be pretty salty, but they go really well with rice balls because the rice is kind of sweet and bland, so they sort of balance each other out. These ones that I have here have pits in them, so I'm just going to pull these apart, get rid of the pit, and I can use some of this in my rice balls. And that's all there is to it. While we're waiting on the rice, this is also a good time to deal with our nori. So let's pull out a sheet. So these come in these big, thin sheets. They're kind of shiny. And you're going to want to take some kitchen shears and cut this into roughly thirds. Let's see. Two. That's not quite going to do it, so I'm going to try about 2.5, I think. And if you've got sushi nori like this, it'll already be torn at places. You could use those if they're about at the right spot. Mine are a little off, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut it like so. So it'll be a little easier to manage down the road. Okay, so it's been just about 30 minutes now, and as you can see, our rice grains have sort of plumped up a little. They're all sort of white instead of that dried translucent color. So now we can drain these and get ready to cook. Alright, so dump your rice out through a mesh strainer. And then we're going to want to let this sit undisturbed for like about 5 minutes just to make sure all the water gets out, so that we're not cooking with any extra water, which would make our rice get all mushy. Alright, so it's been a couple minutes. We're going to throw our rice into a pot. And then cover with 2.5 cups of water. This is a ratio of 1.25 cups of water per cup of rice, which is pretty standard for short grain rice. You can always use the instructions on your bag of rice if you're not sure. This is a pretty good rule of thumb. And then we're going to heat this over high heat until it boils. Alright, so my rice is boiling now, so I'm going to reduce the heat to low and cover. And now I'm going to let it sit for about 12 minutes undisturbed. You don't want to take the lid off in that time, or you'll let all the steam out, which will make the rice take longer to cook and sort of probably mess up your cooking times. Okay, so once your rice has been on low, covered for about 12 or 13 minutes, you can take a quick peek, make sure that the water's all been absorbed. Looks like it has been for me. So then turn it off and let it sit undisturbed for about another 10 minutes as the residual heat finishes cooking it. All right, so once this has been sitting for about 10 minutes, we can take the lid off and we have our rice. And we're gonna want to fluff this real quick. If you've got a Japanese style rice paddle, you can use that. If not, a fork works fine. We're really just trying to make sure that the rice on the bottom isn't getting stuck to the bottom without compressing the rest of the rice down any. Make sure that it is nice and fluffed a little bit. All right, now for the next step, we're going to need to try and cool this rice off some. And one way you can do that is to spread it out on a flat surface. I've just got a plate here. You can see that it's a little sticky, which is actually what we want. And we do need to work while this is still warm, but we don't want it to be so hot that it's scalding when we try to shape it. All right, so let's go and let's make some rice balls. Okay, so first I'm going to show you how to do the traditional hand-making way to do rice balls. So I've got our rice, which is spread out and cooling off a bit here. I've got a bowl of water, just some cool water, and I've got some kosher salt here. So what you're going to want to do is wet your hands. This is going to help keep the rice from sticking to them. And then since this rice hasn't been really seasoned, you're going to want to get some salt on your hands, and you'll season the rice as you make the rice ball. And I've heard it said the best way to do this is take about 3 fingers, dip them in the salt, and then spread that on your palms. And then you're going to want to take a scoop of your rice, and you're looking for, I don't know, about 1/3 to 1/2 cup. Make a divot in the middle. Add your filling. I'm going to start with some of our tuna and mayonnaise. That's probably a little too much for this size of rice ball. And grab some more rice to go on top. Press it in. And then you can shape it however you like. I think for the tuna ones, I'm going to go with the classic triangle shape. So just sort of pat it and coax it into the triangle. Press it a little so that the rice sticks, but not, you don't need to press it very hard. And then finish it with our sheet of nori. We're going to wrap like this. And it's a little bit sloppy, but we have our rice ball. Now, what if you're not, if you wanted to do umeboshi, same deal. Wet your hands, get some salt, let the salt dissolve into the water on your hands. Scoop some rice into your hand. Make a little divot in the middle. Grab some of your filling. I'm going to take about 2 pieces of umeboshi, I think, in there. It's pretty strong. Cover on top a little bit more rice. And shape. And I'm going to make these umeboshi into a round one so that I can tell the difference. And there you have it. And then we can wrap our nori around here. Now, if you are making these for like lunch and you're going to take them with you, I don't recommend putting the nori on ahead of time because it'll tend to absorb moisture and get kind of soggy. So in that situation, you might want to put the nori in like a plastic bag or a container or something, bring it with you and put it on right before you eat. Rice balls are really perfectly good room temperature or cold, so they're a great one to bring with you places for a lunch or a snack. Now, supposing you don't particularly like the idea of getting a bunch of rice goo on your hands, or you don't want to deal with really hot rice, there is another option for that. And what you're going to do for this one is take a sheet of plastic wrap, like I've got here, and stretch it over the top of a small bowl of ramekin. This one might be a little bit on the small side, but you can really make rice balls whatever size you like. So press that down into there, and you're going to take a few drops of water, spread them in there, make sure that gets wet, take a little salt, sprinkle it in, make sure that gets in there, and then same deal, you're going to throw some rice into your plastic wrap, and I'd recommend using a pretty heavy duty plastic wrap for this. You don't want it to like melt at all, and leave a little divot if you're filling it. But for this one, and then you'd put some filling in. Actually, yeah. So some filling in. Cover the top over with some more rice. Go grab a little bit more. Cover the top with some more rice. And then draw up the sides into a little pouch and twist them together so that it's tight. And then press your onigiri into whatever shape you want. Since this one's tuna, I'm going to go triangle again. And then untwist your plastic wrap. And voila, the no mess version. And give this a nice nori wrap. And you're good to go. Now there's one other type of onigiri that I want to talk about quick, and that's using Foodikake, which basically just means something you sprinkle over rice. There's a lot of different kinds of Foodikake rice seasonings that you could find at like an Asian market, or sometimes at a grocery store, a larger grocery store in their Asian food section. Some of them have bits of dried egg, some of them have bits of dried like salmon. Frequently they've got some seaweed, something kind of salty. This has shiso leaf, which is also called perilla, or better known in the West as perilla. Sugar, a little bit of malic acid, so it's kind of like a little bit sweet and salty. This one, a lot of them kind of are in that zone. And they can be very interesting and a nice way to sort of spice up plain rice without any filling. For these, you just want to throw some rice in, whichever way you're doing it. Get your scoop of rice and then sprinkle your seasoning on. And the heat and moisture coming off of the still hot rice will sort of reconstitute this a little bit. You can mix that in some so that it's evenly incorporated. See, you can see it sort of turning my rice a little bit purpley here, where it's been in contact with it. And then same thing, just sort of pick it up, make it into a ball, flatten it. There you go, a Foodikake Onigiri. Alright, I have one more onigiri trick for you, and that's Yucky Onigiri, or pan-fried onigiri. This is a different style that's meant to be eaten hot right away, and it gets nice and crispy on the outside. So I've got a pan heating over medium with a neutral oil, like a vegetable oil or something like that, not something strongly flavored like olive oil or peanut oil. And we're just going to throw our onigiri down in there and let that go until it develops a nice brown crust. And this is just a totally plain rice ball. I put a little bit of salt on it, but no filling, no mix-ins. Alright, so you see we've got a little bit of browning going on here. It's kind of crispy on the top. It's not as sticky anymore. We're going to let that go on the other side and get the same thing. Alright, so once you've got a nice browned crust that's a little bit crispy on the outside, you're going to want to brush that, take some soy sauce and brush it down. And this is going to make sort of a glaze that'll be a little salty and like savory on the outside of this rice ball when we flip it over and let it keep cooking. And we're gonna there we go. And we're going to turn the heat down just a hair. And likewise, we're going to brush down this side. And then we're going to give this a couple more minutes on each side until it darkens up. And you're going to let that go until it's nice and brown and dark like this. So there you have it, 4 different kinds of onigiri. I hope you guys give these a shot. You could really fill these with whatever you like. Chicken, like a mushroom saute. Really, the world is your rice ball. So I hope you guys give it a shot. If you have any recipes you'd like to see us do, please leave a comment down below, and we'll see if we can get to them. And if you like cooking content from the public library, stay tuned to this space. Later on in the week, around Wednesday, we're going to be putting up a video about decorating cupcakes. So until next time, I've been Mr. Ben from the Merrimack Public Library. Bye!